Representative Bush. It is so good to see you. And we are so grateful that you have been able to take the time out to join us for the kickoff of our inaugural Juneteenth Summit for the Truth and Conciliation Commission. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. It's my honor and pleasure to be here. So good to be with you all.
So, part of why we were adamant about trying to get you in this conversation and here with the kickoff is because you were very central to even the conception of Truth and Conciliation as an organization and the work of conciliation in this country. About a year ago, I don't know if you remember because so much has happened in that time, but about a year ago, the day after George Floyd was murdered, you and I were on the phone having a conversation because we were experiencing very similar things. Do you remember that conversation?
I do. Yes. I think I know where you're going with this. Yes.
And for you, like for me, there was an overwhelming sense of numbness and inability to respond. Can you just like take yourself back to that moment in time and what you were thinking, what you were feeling when we were processing the murder of George Floyd, yet another Black person killed by state-sanctioned violence in the United States?
I just, first of all, I was glad to have you to be able to like, like share that with because it was traumatic, but also so familiar. And I think for me it was just the feeling of, if like this happened with all of these people around and people saying like you're going to kill him and him saying you're going to kill me, and the fact that the person did it, because like that's that adds this whole other piece that we don't always get, like especially when we talk about like police murder as it relates like shootings, because oftentimes like the person is running away or their hands are up or something, and so you don't get that like, hey, you're going to kill them as often. But in this particular thing, it was like, you're doing this, like you're doing it right now. You're doing it like this is happening, like you're doing it. If you don't get up, and the person was okay, Derek Chauvin was okay with continuing on in that behavior that led in that brute force that led to the death of to the murder of George Floyd. And I just remember feeling like that could be any like if this can just happen, like and how do people want you to reconcile that? How do you reconcile? I just remember feeling like we had that conversation, like where was the love first? Like where was the friendship? Where was that first? And I remember telling you about how it made me think about all of those times during the Ferguson uprising when people would get mad at us and they would say like, well, like these are the way that they are because like it's your fault. You all are still protesting. It's March. Michael Brown was murdered in August and it's March 2015 and you all are still out protesting. Like it's June and you all are still out protesting. And we would say, well, because y'all keep killing us. Like we still out because y'all keep killing us. And then you tell us like, well, if you would just forgive the police and then we can, so we can heal and then we can build together and move on. But, so we need this truth and reconciliation because we need to be able to, you tell your truth and then we can work together and reconcile it. And our thing was, Like, how do we reconcile something that was never there? Like, where was that relationship or friendship or, you know, kinship, camaraderie, anything, fellowship, community? Where was that first? There was never that first. So how do we get back to that? And then if you look at it the other way, how do you put two things together when they don't agree? Because there's no agreement on the side, you know, there's no agreement. So anyway, I just remember talking with you about that and just how hurtful it was for people to say that we needed to do that when even to this day we say Black Lives Matter and you hear back Blue Lives.
Right. And I promise I will not cry, or at least I will try my hardest not to cry, because I remember just, and I think I even said this to you, being broken.
Yeah.
And broken not in the sense of, you know, both of us being pastors and deeply committed to our faith journey, not in the sense of how God breaks you so that God is able to move in your spirit and move some things around in order to rebuild you. I felt broken in the sense of not usable, not functioning in the way that I was created to function. And I shared that I know myself to be, and if we had a superpower, that empathy would be my super characteristic. And the day before, when we learned of George Floyd's murder, I couldn't cry, I couldn't feel, I was so numb. And so broken in that way that I felt like I was no longer myself and useful in how I had been created. And I remember saying, America does not get to break me this way. America does not get to break Black people this way, in the sense that we are generationally and recurringly robbed of our humanity. And so in that conversation, you also talked about, just like even now, the work and the activism that led you to this moment, that led you to run and to run again and to run again and win. That activism was sparked by the uprising in Ferguson, and that there were truth and reconciliation attempts prior, even in the Ferguson, St. Louis area of Missouri. When you think about that work of what you all have worked to do before, what's different now as we think about moving this country to a place of truth-telling and conciliatory practice? What's different?
I think that when we look at, there's been this tide, you know, the next, I can't even really say generation because it's still multi-generational, at least two anyway, that are actually saying that what I have right now today is enough to be able to do work, you know, and telling the truth about it, being very unapologetic about it, but also going into so many different spaces. And that's the thing that I think that is really, that's really starting to soak in with me when we look at you know, are people used to hearing us tell our truths and speak in spaces as it relates to civil rights, police brutality, that type of movement work. hmm And they expect it. They expect somebody to do it. They expect somebody to be middle of the road, somebody to be, a little further, further to the left of it. They expect some people to be what they would consider extreme or radical. They expect that.
Mhm.
But we have realized um, we are speaking on levels and telling the truth about what's happening to us as it relates to everything that happens to us and how all of it interconnects. So we're talking about the environmental injustice and environmental racism that's happening. We're talking about what institutionalized racism really looks like. We're talking about how it affects so how it's in education and how it's in healthcare and how, and we're in all of those spaces doing that work and bringing it together to talk about equity and to talk about justice and how justice is actually love, but you can't have but you got to have justice and equity in order to have equality and all of we're talking about all of it. So I think that what one thing that I've seen that has changed, and I can't say that if there wasn't some of that happening before, but right now, all at the same time, like we have people who are soaking in, environmental justice work, like soaking in and talking about how it affects the Black community and the Brown community, soaking in as it relates to like the Black maternal crisis and Black infant mortality, and just so many avenues. That is something that I think is different. Also, of course, we have social media being something that's just right in everybody's faces. You can see the videos and see what's happening. But and so you would think it would be like, oh yes, like yeah, now they can see. So it's not just us saying these things are happening. Like now the world can see it. Well, the world is seeing it and it's like, okay, yeah, that's not good. Like we need to do something about that. But then the world is also seeing that, well, if we can put that online, we can put this online too, and how much we, and how we feel about y'all, and so we're seeing that rise in that white supremacy and that like overt racism. So I think to the point to where people can scale the walls and break and breach the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol building, and for the most part, people in power, the ones that had a hand in it, so far have gotten away with it.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and this is multi-generational in the sense that it's not necessarily new, where people who are experiencing the harm have been speaking out, have been articulating their truth, and we are now coming to a place where more people are listening. But then there are perhaps attendees to this summit who are in a space that are saying, well, how do we start? How do we begin to even address the truth of our national history? How, as a white person, how, as someone who's not experienced police violence, or someone who doesn't even understand environmental justice and the way that race intersects in that arena, what advice do you share with them in terms of how they begin to address the truth of our national history?
So how did you finish 7th grade? How did you finish 9th grade? How did you, anything that you've done in your life that you knew that you needed to complete that was vital for you, how did you complete it? You got the education on it. You decided to put yourself in spaces where the information was there and it was available to you. You were intentional about seeking out or researching that information. Who do I go to? Do I go talk to my geometry teacher about this English lit paper? Like, or like making sure that you put yourself in the places where the information is. And so I think you get started by educating yourself and not expecting though that other people do all the educating. You figure it out. Like how do so if I want to learn what critical race theory, I want to know what critical race theory is. I keep hearing about it, all over the news, or whatever it is. If I want to learn about what happened in 1619, or I want to learn about the Reconstruction, I want to learn about like whatever. I want to learn what really Jim Crow was about. If you want to learn that, what is Juneteenth, coming up? If you don't know what Juneteenth is, if you want to know, like, go ahead and educate yourselves, do the deep work to find out what that is, and then connect to those groups and people or organizations that are doing that work. There is no limit to what you can learn if you choose to learn it. So the same way that you finished all those other things that you set out to do because you knew you needed that to be able to move to the next, you need this too, because with the problem that we have, one big problem, a huge the problem that we have in this country, probably one of the biggest problems we have, is ignorance. Mm-hmm. It is ignorance that fuels fear. So when you break ignorance down, when you stop ignorance at the door by being educated, like that's how you do it. And then, find out, like, look at people, like even like yourself, so if you are able to look at what Dr. Spaulding is doing and say, like, what organizations is she connected to? What work has she been doing? Can I look up the speeches that she's given and the radio shows that she's been on and here find out what books she's reading? Like, this is how you get there, and go for it. Don't let anybody tell you no or push you back. But then once you get that, now it's up to you to go and spread that to your network. Who are you talking about? Did you just get it for yourself so you can prop yourself up and feel like you did something good? No, now you got to have those hard conversations with the people that I'll never get in a room with and talk to, that Dr. Spaulding will never probably get in a room to be able to talk to. Those people that are at your table at a Sunday dinner or whatever it is, those people that are in those boardrooms that you're in, or those folks, take that information to them and then help us make this an anti-racist country.
Thank you. Yes, continue to educate and put yourself in those conversations. We have a few questions from pre-submitted questions, and one of them is, take it for granted that there are rooms some of these attendees will be in, that they can step up in their privilege and have these conversations, and rooms that we are not in. But there are certainly rooms that you are in as a representative in Congress. And right now we are seeing the backlash to critical race theory. We are seeing how white supremacists are gaslighting and utilizing critical race theory to amplify an agenda that began long time ago, but was magnified in this last administration. And so how and what role should Congress be playing to rectify like what is happening as a backlash and what is being misinformation and all of these different attacks on trying to speak the truth in this country?
Yeah, I think that we have to hold power accountable. And I think that's one avenue. And I will say that the committees that I sit on the House Judiciary Committee and our Committee on Oversight and Reform. And one thing that we've been doing is we have been bringing those people that are in positions of power that can actually affect change in this way. We've been bringing them to the table. So just a few days ago, we had a committee hearing with the FBI Director, Christopher Wray. We will be having another one as well on today. and on our other committee, bringing people like that to the table where we can ask them those questions, ask them the questions about, what happened, what was the response like, why was the response this, if we knew that there was that we've known for years, you all have known for years what domestic terror, what they call domestic terrorism anyway, is, what is this extremism and what that rise looks like, and where to find these groups and these militia groups and all of that. If you know that, why haven't you done much about it? Because we see all of these mass shootings, and we see who is often, what is it, Black folks always fit the description of, when a robbery happens or carjacking or this or that happens, we always fit the description. Well, it seems to be that there is a description, when we talk about all of these mass shootings, when we're talking about this rise in white supremacy and the violence that it takes place in relation to that. So why does it continue, and why is it on the rise when we have people in power that are supposed to be looking at that and working on that, when we have actual task force and committees that are supposed to be working on this? When you have the technology and the data, why is it happening? Because the other side of that is when these powers are coming against groups that are fighting to save Black lives, or fighting for land for our Native community, when we're talking about that, they have all the technology and all of this, and they use that against us, even when we have not killed anybody, when we have not, our plan hasn't been to go and shoot up anything or murder anyone. That's one way that we do it. The other way is we organize. We organize, we mobilize, we galvanize on the ground. When the people put pressure, stuff has to happen. And so, especially when you have somebody like me and several others here in Congress, y'all tee it up for us. Like, get it ready, like you do the work on the ground, and like, hey representative, we got this, because that pressure, then we can take that pressure and then we can apply pressure where we are. But when we don't have the backing of the community members, it makes it really hard to be able to get stuff done. So if you all do that work and you apply pressure, that's what activists do. Activists, you keep the pressure on, you keep the visibility and the awareness going, and then we can take it and then move it further.
Absolutely. I know that your time is precious. You have work to do in Congress today, right now. And we, again, just want to thank you for being here. And basically, you have said what needed to be said. It's a both and. It's not just on congressional representatives to be doing this work. It's also on community to be doing this work and for us to be doing it together. So as we wrap up, last thoughts, this is not just a passion for you. It is not just what you feel to be doing. You are doing actual work in Congress to make this society, this nation, an anti-racist nation. What can attendees support you on in the work that you are doing? How can we do this work together with you?
Yeah, so I have, we have several bills that we'll be working on. Some we're already working on. We're about to roll out one. I talked about just today. I'm leading a bill alongside Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, and this bill is to decriminalize all drugs. And because we know who that affects. So if we're going to talk about mass incarceration, we need to be about the work of decarceration. And so that having the support of the community to say, this is what we need, because we can't, we want to say that mass incarceration, and the fact that the United States, is we have the most, we have the most people on lockdown, the most people in prison, when we talk about, these big world powers. But if we want to talk about that, we got to also talk about how we can change that and who has been mostly directly impacted. So that's one way. But having the support of the community is going to help with that. Also, working on another bill that we'll be rolling out soon, and where we look at public safety and what does public safety actually mean, and putting public safety in the place where it should be. So when we say, when I say defund the police, what I'm saying is I want to take money, that is being used. Oh, I want to take over funding, and I want to take that and put it into our social network to make sure that our communities are whole. And I don't think that saying that our communities should be whole is a bad thing. Like, why not have people eat? Why not have people, when we have 17 million vacant homes in our country, but 1.5 million people living on the street? Like, that's what we're talking about, making sure that people are whole, families are whole. That's what we need to support. So that's how people can support me and the work that so many of my colleagues are doing, is allow us to do the different thing. Like, trust us. And if you talk to us, let us know what you think. Allow us to explain what we're working on, because it may be different, but our work is to save lives. I came to Congress to save lives. I can't even help you yet. I didn't come to Congress to help folks, not yet. I came to save your life, because I can give you all the jobs all day long, but if you don't have life, then who does the job go to? I got to save your life first. So let me save your life, and then we can work on getting you a job. Then we can work on all of these other things. So that's what we're doing. Trust us that we care about our communities. We love humanity, and this is the work. Just allow us to do a different thing to get a different result.
Thank you so much. Please continue to go on and do the great things that you are doing. I also want to thank you for being absolutely who you said you would be in office. There are so many who don't do that. And I just want to say, from day one, you are absolutely who you said you are. And that truth is what is going to get us to a place of living in full humanity. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And we uplift and support all that you are doing, because you are saving lives in our country.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Spaulding, and thank you for holding me accountable, because I'm able to lean on you in those moments when it's tough. So I appreciate you, and thank you for being there always. Bye.